garments. It's basically woven and knitwear, the blue and the red, that takes up all of the chunk that we export to Japan. Japan's apparel market, if you look at the chart, you will see that it mostly imports from China and of course followed by Vietnam. And Bangladesh is very, very little so far. Look at it, Bangladesh is the green, which is 3.94%. We dream to be way bigger. We have crossed $1 billion mark. I think the first 3 months, Ambassador Raval, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more than, I think, 350 million already. So we are hopefully targeting a $1.3 billion in this year. 50 million already. So we are hopefully targeting a items are very big $1 billion. This is one of our this year. 50 million already. So we are hopefully targeting a items are very big $1 billion. This is one of our this year. 50 million already. So we are hopefully targeting a items are very big $1 billion. This is one of our this year. 50 million already. So we are hopefully targeting a items are very big $1 billion. This is one of our this year. 50 million already. So we are hopefully targeting a items are very big $1 billion. This is one of our this year. 50 million already. So we are hopefully targeting a items are very big $1 billion. This is one of our this year. 50 million already. So we are hopefully targeting a items are very big $1 billion. First government, first monitoring, your contracts, your responsible, your contributions to central fund for the welfare of workers, your environmental sustainable, your 85 certified factories out of this country are platinum, 320 more are certified, and world's highest rated nuclear woven water generators are all here in Bangladesh. Made in Bangladesh is a transparent label. Here our information is publicly available through the website. The impact lives of millions. 83.5% share of export earnings, 4.4 million employment, 60% of female labor force, and of course contribution to GDP is 11%. And how collaboration can enhance trade. Over here, I would just like to elaborate that in 2024, when the GSP is over and when we graduate to the next level, to MIC, then Japan's GSP is going to end. So we would like to rather request that we go for probably an extended negotiation on EPA. So we need to be under serious economic partnership agreements, and extended GSP should be negotiated by our government with Japan's. Bangladesh's value addition has been insignificant. See, in volume we've risen by 7.7%, and in value only 5.29%. So we need value addition. We need higher products, better products. In that case, what we can do is, if you look at this, you'll see that 60 to 65% we are importing woven fabric, which are actually not all that value added. So if Japanese friends are willing to set up textile mills in Bangladesh, we could buy fabric from you and then export it back to Japan. So that's a collaboration that we can think of. So we have 100 SEZ, special economic zones, being set up, and we would require your interest. Fourth Industrial Revolution, there's a huge need for us to go to innovation, and Japan is known for technology and for innovation. So that is an area that Japan and Bangladesh could also collaborate. So innovation to industry, industry to innovation, that is where we can also access, because Japanese equipment is very, very well received in Bangladesh. Japanese technology is very well welcome. So we might as well collaborate on these issues. And it's actually the last slide. It's an attractive investment location. My colleagues have all said it to you, and we're very secured by law. So 100% foreign equity is allowed along with unrestricted exit. Competitive advantage, of course, advantage in labor cost, demographic dividend. We have youth basically flooding our marketplace. So one thing is for my Japanese colleagues and for Abal, and of course the government representatives here. For ASEAN, there's Vietnam and of course there's Myanmar, but it's now time for co-opetition. It's not a time for confrontation or competition, it's collaboration that we're looking for. So the new word is co-opetition that we want from ASEAN. So Bangladesh probably can aspire to be ASEAN plus one, so that at least we could have preferential trade treatments coming our way. And Bangladesh deserves it. Like I said, 60% or more are women. We're green, we're welcoming, and Japanese colleagues are already here. So while you invest in diapers and everything else, and Ajinomoto and great products here, we would of course welcome anything else. Also textile mills especially, and of course automobile and all the other sectors that you find is lucrative and welcoming for you. We wait for you to invest, and we welcome you with open arms. Thank you, everyone.
ICT, electronics, textile and clothing, agribusiness. Very interesting. Yesterday also I had a meeting with one of my Japanese friends. He is willing to make investment in agro food processing in one of our economic zones, Jamalpur economic zones, and we are extending all support to him. Attractive incentive schemes. Honorable Chief Guest has also mentioned. The BIDA Chairman has also mentioned about competitive incentive package offered by Bangladesh. Actually, all the investment promotion agencies offer these incentive schemes. Yes, we are listening about Mr. Ari's presentation, and some other investors also mentioned about gradual rise of Japanese companies, investors in Bangladesh, but definitely it's very low in comparison to other countries. If you consider it, Vietnam, India, this figure is not very big. 279 Japanese companies are now working in Bangladesh. Hopefully it will rise with the implementation of Japanese economic zone, and also if the ongoing development activities in West Kalimantan picks up. Investment promotion and facilitating agencies. To start with BIDA, the Apex Investment Promotion Agency of Bangladesh. What services, the key services provided by these investment promotion agencies are investment promotion, investment facilitation, policy advocacy, matchmaking, sector briefing, project structuring, even the services, it's consultancy, regulatory approval, foreign borrowing, and facility investors aftercare. Bangladesh in home and abroad for the country, and they are trying to improve the cost of, actually reduce the cost of doing business and improve our ranking in doing ease of business index. Services that provide promotional activities and facilitated services, what I was telling about, yes, they organize these, all the promotional activities. BID actually leads, even coordinates and leads the other investment promotion agencies both at home and abroad. Bangladesh Export Processing Zones Authority, they have established 8 EBZs in the country on 2,290 acres of land, and very recently we have given them about 1,150 acres of land to establish one economic zone in Meksharai. About 591 factories are established there. This is all about Berza economic zone at Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar, and they are planned on that land. They are expecting actually investment of 4.5 billion at Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar for their economic zone. Bangladesh High-Tech Park Authority, I will only tell about that. Okay, they have a target of exporting $5 billion US of IT and IT-enabled services to foreign countries. And they have already developed Bangladesh Bangabandhu High-Tech Park on 355 acres of land, only from 40 kilometers away from Dhaka city. And very recently, Bangladesh High-Tech Park Authority has signed one MOU with Japanese IT giant Fujitsu Research Institute. I personally think that it's a very big step forward, but all depends on translating this MOU into real benefits for Bangladesh. They have also developed on 15-story Sheikh Hasina Software Technology Park in Jeshore. Already 80% of the total space they have rented out, and they have reserved 20% space for foreign investors. Japanese investors are welcome at Sheikh Hasina Software Technology Park in Jeshore. About Public-Private Partnership Authority, PPP Authority, they start with the screening and approving projects for PPP sector, and it ends with promotion and marketing. And in the pipeline, they have about $24.92 billion of projects. Very recently, not recently, in 2017, they have signed one agreement with Japan for establishing PPP project, implementing PPP project under Z2Z category. And now this is Bangladesh Economic Zones Authority, my own organization. We are working to establish 100 economic zones in next 15 years, and already we have identified 89 sites and working on 28 zones. Completed developing our public and private total about 13 economic zones. And our target is to export and produce US dollars of 40 billion worth from these economic zones. Our achievements so far. Very recently, we have signed agreement with Sumitomo Corporation of Japan. In any standard, we consider this as the biggest milestone in attracting foreign investment from Japan to Bangladesh. And we believe that within 2 years, this zone will be ready for establishing industries. In the economic zones, promising investors are Honda. They have already established their factory at Abdul Monem Economic Zone. SK Gas, Berger, Asian Paints, Adani, Wilmar, Sozis is also a prospective investor for venture. We are supporting their venture to establish one industrial park and port facilities at Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar. We are also working with Hyundai, and very recently the Vice President of Mitsubishi also visited Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar. We are optimistic about their investment in the near future. Proposed foreign and local investment in the economic zones. We are processing $17 billion of investment, and we have already allocated land for these investors. Creation of a land bank. We have already acquired 50,000 acres of land for Beza, and our target is to acquire 25,000 acres more, so that in the next few years, investors need not to worry for their land, and we provide service land to the investors. That remains a major constraint in Bangladesh in establishing industries. Status of production, industries in production at SEZ 19, and industries under implementation 23. This is all about OSS. JICA is supporting Beza in establishing OSS Center, and we have already established OSS Center. OSS Act is framed, OSS rules is framed. Now OSS Center is established. Now we are providing 11 services online and 25 services from OSS Center Not online, but these services will also be online within 1 year. And formally, this center will be launched very shortly. Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar is the single largest project of BESA. It comprises of 3 economic zones actually, Minshara economic zone, Feni economic zone and Sitakonda economic zone. We have 30,000 acres of land there, very close to the Chittagong port city and very well connected with the Chittagong airport, within 10 kilometers of Dhaka Chittagong highway. So we are very optimistic about this economic zone and we are getting very good response. Already we have got investment proposal of over $14 million at Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar, and we have allocated land to them. Under G2G category, as I have said, we have signed with Sumitomo. Hopefully, IFC and JICA will also be equity partners in the near future. China Harbour and Engineering is developing the Chinese economic zones, and Adani has proposed to develop Indian economic zone at Mirsharai on 1,000 acres of land. Another Indian company is assigned with BESA for developing one economic zone at Mongla. Yes, BESA is also in Maheshkhali. We have acquired about 27,000 acres of land in Maheshkhali. Actually, we are the major stakeholder in Matarbari Maheshkhali area, owning most of the land, and we are working to develop this land, providing service land both to the both investors from home and abroad. Major Japanese industries are showing interest in establishing LNG terminal, LPG terminal, and in the near future, some heavy industries definitely will be there to be established by Japanese and other investors from other countries. So, for ongoing plot allocation by BESA, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar, Sabrang Tourism Park, we are allocating land. Jamalpur Economic Zone, we are allocating land. Maheshkhali Economic Zone, Damkata also. We have already allocated land for the joint venture companies there. 510 acres we have allocated, and different private economic zones. These are all the brands that are associated with some right side they are associated with BESA, and left side brands are already present in Bangladesh. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Thanks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Yasushi Sawada. I'm a managing director of Ajinomoto Bangladesh. Thank you for giving this opportunity to explain our company. From now on, I'd like to talk about Ajinomoto Group and Ajinomoto Bangladesh. Firstly, I'd like to start Ajinomoto Group overview. Ajinomoto Group is a #1 food company in Japan and #1 amino acid producer in the world. We are a 100 years old company which founded in 1909. Number of employees is more than 34,000 and number of athletes in overseas is 73. We develop business in 35 countries and regions, and selling the products in more than 130 countries. In last fiscal year, the sales amount for Ajinomoto Group was $10 billion US. This is Ajinomoto Group business expansion tree. As I mentioned, Ajinomoto Group is a global leader in amino acid. We have developed various products using amino acid technology, not only food products, but pharmaceutical products, bioscience products, and fine chemicals. Ajinomoto Group provide a wide range of food products, not only MSG, monosodium glutamate, but also seasonings, processed foods, beverages, coffee products, and frozen foods around the world. This is our history of overseas expansion. After opening the office in New York 1917, we have expanded our business in many countries and regions around the world. Here in Bangladesh, umami seasoning Ajinomoto sometimes is known as tasting salt. However, Ajinomoto is not tasting salt. Most of tasting salt is containing the salt. Ajinomoto contains 99 plus MSG, monosodium glutamate. MSG is basic taste of deliciousness of food. All food contains glutamic acid and it exists in natural food like tomato, mushroom, meat, cheese, onion, and other vegetables. This glutamic acid is also known as MSG. Ajinomoto is made from natural ingredients by fermentation process such as sugar cane, cassava, and corn. It is certified by WHO, FAO as safe and healthy products. This table shows minimum quantity in package and retail price of Ajinomoto sold in different countries. Ajinomoto is sold worldwide by affordable price and size. Ajinomoto Group produce various types of seasoning in each country. As food culture is different in each country, we develop seasonings suitable for each country's cuisine. Ajinomoto Group also aims to contribute to the achievement of SDGs as a company that operates globally. Let's move on to Ajinomoto Bangladesh company profile. Ajinomoto Bangladesh was founded in 2011. Our head office and factory are located in Tongi industrial area. Currently, we are repacking and selling Ajinomoto in Bangladesh. This is our company mission. We offer Bangladesh people deliciousness and happiness through our products. We will make every effort to realize this company mission. This is a repacking flow of Ajinomoto. We are importing MSG bulk from Thailand after receiving MSG bulk in Chittagong port, delivered to our factory in Tongi industrial area. After that, we repack at factory. I'd like to talk about our sales area in Bangladesh. We have three sales depots. There are 2 sales depots in Dhaka and 1 sales depot in Chittagong. From these sales depots, we are selling to the customer directly, and we have started selling through the distributor outside of Dhaka since last year. Currently, we have 28 distributors and plan to expand until 34 districts within this year. From now on, please look at Ajinomoto TBC.
কিভাবে যে আরো সুস্বাদু সবজি রান্না করি
আজিনোমোটো সুস্বাদের জন্য আজিনোমোটো
ওয়াও
আজিনোমোটো
বাহ, খুবই সুস্বাদু।
অনেক মজাদার হবে।
This TVC shows Ajinomoto is a seasoning that makes various dishes delicious. And then delicious food makes family happy and smile. You can use Ajinomoto for various Bengal menus such as dal, chicken, beef and vegetable curry and biryani. This TVC is having good reputation from customers in Bangladesh. Ajinomoto Bangladesh provide Ajinomoto by affordable price and size. We have 5 SKUs. 42 gram is sold for 20 taka and 20 gram is sold for 10 taka. Everyone can purchase our products by affordable price. I'd like to explain our CSR activities. In January 2019, we conducted a lecture on meal for nutritional improvement in the elementary school near our office. We also conducted sampling activities of Ajinomoto to their parents through children, and also provide some hygiene items for maintaining for health safety. This CSR activity is very important for social development in Bangladesh. From now on, I'd like to share our current business issue. Currently, there are many counterfeits of Ajinomoto in the market. As a feature of these counterfeits, the package design are very similar to Ajinomoto. The brand name of Ajinomoto and the red ball mark as a registered trademark. Raw material MSG of counterfeits are imported from China and repackers in Bangladesh then mix salt and sell at lower price than Ajinomoto. BSTI and the National Consumer Right Protection visited the market and took legal action to wholesale shop selling counterfeits, such as sending the warning letter and giving a fine. However, the effect of these actions is limited. We would like to request you to support for removing the counterfeits from the market. The second is under-invoice issue. One of our competitors, Venom, is imported from Taiwan. This is the importer and distributor information, Venom. They declare the import value by under-invoice value to the customs and reduce custom duty and other taxes. We have the evidence for under-invoice. This is the export MSG data from Taiwan. MSG exported from Taiwan is all better. Their export price was $1,523 per metric ton. This is the customs data in Bangladesh. MSG assessment value was $942 per metric ton. There is huge gap between the export price and actual assessment value at customs. And the same way, Chinese MSG also have a big gap between their export price and assessment value. Bangladesh customs loses huge amount, not only custom duty, but other taxes. We would like to request that actual assessment value of import MSG from Taiwan and China by raising up to the export price. These issues are impediments to our business and on the agenda of today's afternoon session. These are also a big loss for Bangladesh revenue. In addition, foreign companies like us will feel difficulties to do business in Bangladesh. Thank you to Bangladesh government for your excellency in responding to these issues, and we hope your continuous support to solve these issues. Even though our product in Bangladesh is only Ajinomoto, we are planning to launch new products in next year and expand our business in the future. Thank you for your attention. That's all for my presentation.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening to you all. And thanks for joining the first State of Investment Ecosystem webinar. We have a very special guest today, Lutfi Siddiqui, Special Envoy of Honorable Chief Advisor. Thank you, Lutfi, for joining. So maybe before we jump into the actual webinar, can I ask you to say a quick few words to the attendees? Thank you.
Thank you, Ashik, and congratulations on this initiative of outreach, openness, and engagement, and all the best for the series. And thank you for welcoming me to the very first. Good afternoon, everyone else. Good morning to those out in the West. I just returned from the US. I was at Washington, DC at the World Bank IMF annual meetings and several other meetings on the sidelines of that, with our head of delegation, Dr. Saliuddin Ahmed, and also the Bangladesh Bank Governor, Dr. Ahsan Mansoor. Two distinguished, exceptional professionals who command a lot of respect, confidence, and credibility. And that's visible in any meeting, in any room that we went into. Respect and credibility, as you know, is hugely important on the international scene. And we have that at the highest level, in the highest order, now Chief Advisor. As you would have seen at the UN General Assembly or the recent visit by the Malaysian Prime Minister to Dhaka, our Chief Advisor has an effortless and seemingly tireless ability to connect. And that opens up an enormous amount of goodwill and diplomatic space that frankly transcends our national brand. So for those of us engaged in economic diplomacy, to all of you, in fact, I would say that it's a tremendous asset that we must capitalize on. Here at home, I just thought I'd make a couple of observations before we get going. It's just under 2 months for me in my seat. My first observation is that I've never, in all the jobs and roles that I've had around the world, I've never felt as much respect for my colleagues or co-workers, each of the advisors and many others, that I feel in this role. Each one of them not only just bring personal accomplishments, but also unimpeachable personal integrity to their job. And it's easy to forget how important that is in the context that we're in right now. They also have a willingness to learn and course correct if required, and a total lack of silo mentality, which means that people like me, with their support, can travel visa-free across the ministries when required and get things done. The second observation I would make is that I very quickly developed an appreciation for the baseline that existed when the interim government assumed responsibility. Firstly, it came at huge and tragic human cost, an enormous sacrifice of lives and life-changing injuries. And that vests in us our sense of duty every single day. From an economics and governance point of view, also sobering to look at the baseline. There had been a prolonged decline in macro variables, drop in reserves, non-payment of obligations, persistent inflation, rating downgrades, the drop in the currency value without a commensurate recovery in exports, and of course, imbalances in the banking sector, to put it euphemistically. So The baseline was not a clean slate, it was a downtrend, and the macro challenge was and is to arrest a gathering steep decline, stabilize it, and hopefully turn it around over time. So appreciating the baseline and the counterfactual is important, whether it's about the economy or, frankly, the law and order situation. Having said that, though, I think zooming out and looking ahead, looking forward, it's very exciting to imagine the possibilities that are there ahead of us right now. Having been a global investment banker for many years, the phrase structural reforms, I'm very familiar with that. It has been used repeatedly as a key ask by investors from investment destinations in developing countries. And we have today an almost perfect alignment between the domestic reforms agenda of the interim government and the components of those structural reforms. The same factors of structural reforms when it comes to governance apply equally to the factors of structural reforms for investments. As you know, the government has stood up these commissions, the multiple reform commissions, looking at a different dimension: police reforms, public administration, judicial reforms, including cost-cutting themes, gender issues, worker rights. And these should simultaneously help design structural changes at a systemic level. But even as these structural changes take effect in the background, we must jump in and make tactical changes, block and tackle, remove roadblocks, redress issues as we encounter them in the day-to-day, every day. We're not sitting on our hands waiting for big reforms. We're also not expending any emotional energy lamenting or complaining about this or that, which is far from satisfactory right now. That is a given. The fact that we have reform commissions for these areas suggests that there are large parts that are broken right now. But it's really the direction of travel that excites me. I'm going to stop now and come back to, and hopefully come back for Q&A later. But let me finish by saying that there are two overriding principles that I believe we must follow in our reforms journey and as we improve our operating climate. One is due process, and the other is customer journey. We must ensure that due process in decision-making is followed so that even when I do not agree with a specific decision, I have confidence in the fairness of that process. And secondly, every process must put the customer at its center so that the care is taken to make that customer journey better. And that customer can be a citizen in general, or it can be an investor in a specific context. So back to you, Ashik, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's a very nice lead into my presentation. So, and I promise you, it's not going to be a 50-slide presentation, just like what we have had seen before. But as you probably know, I'm 3 weeks into this job, and I'm ever so thankful for all the staff members, just like he is, the members of Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, Economic Zone Authority, the wider government machinery for the support I had received. I can confirm that having a demanding Nobel Prize winning head of state boss is not an easy task. But let's jump into the presentation. Let me share my screen. And before I jump into the slides, one more thing I must admit, it has been absolutely heartwarming to receive calls from so many of you, resident and non-resident across the world, who have offered to help and make a difference. So thank you to you all. The purpose, let's start with the purpose of this meeting. And the idea behind this is really to create a platform where we can all interact and have a common dialogue. We can share our ambitions, tackle misinformation. At the same time, you can ask tough questions to us so that we remain accountable to you. This will happen on a regular basis. We will have guests coming in, the likes of Lutfi this time, hopefully the likes of the Governor, Central Bank next time. And we keep on coming back in a report card format to you with the actions we have taken and the actions we are likely to take and where we would interact with you and how we could interact with you. We'll take your suggestions on best practices. As you had seen in the original invite, we had an option to ask questions and share comments, and we have taken some of those into our presentation. So you've probably seen this slide before. I'm not going to try to explain what it really is. We as a country have generally undersold ourselves, or at least not performed to the degree that we believe we can. The same goes to this slide. When you look at the stock, we have stayed in the traditional side of FDI, whereas some other markets who happen to have very similar fundamental strengths have gone into a very different direction. Now, very recently, as you probably know, Be Ready Index, which replaces the Ease of Doing Business Index by World Bank, was published. And this is where Bangladesh sits. Again, very similar picture to what we had known before and what we had come across personally in real life. So how do we tackle this? How do we solve this problem? So we firmly believe that the most crucial factor in attracting foreign direct investment or attracting investors to invest in Bangladesh, whether it's foreign or local, is by making sure the current investors are well looked after. So we're calling it the project ambassador. And in my last two and a half weeks of job, I have met roughly about 235 CEOs, consultants, and entrepreneurs, mentors, and thanks to all of you for your ideas, suggestions on and specifying the challenges that you have faced in the last few years. So we've bucketed them down in these 5 areas. These are the core areas of concern from our investors. And they probably don't need explanation in most cases. When we say lack of consultation, that happens in both incoming and for both existing investor buckets. So for incoming investors, it's about knowing who should be their first point of contact, not getting lost in the governmental alleys. For existing investors, it's more about us listening. When I say us, the government of Bangladesh, listening to the challenges that you're facing and actually be open to a continuous dialogue. Access to resources is a very common point that I hear. Policy continuity refers to situations where we chop and change our policies and procedures, which makes a financial model completely go out of the window. And then finally, corruption is a common theme. I think we rank currently 149th out of 180 countries. So surely we have a long way to go. So how do we resolve this? We've taken it into sort of 2 major spaces. We've tried to split it into 2 groups. One group where we have high impact quick wins, and in the other group, we have some longer term views. So I'll show you some of the high impact quick wins that we have been able to achieve, and we are almost there in that sense. So let's look at economic performance. And to be honest, just as Luthip, I have a lot of respect for our central bank governor, and I should not be taking credit for what has happened in the economic performance turnaround, or at least baseline setting. So as you probably know, the exchange rate has fairly flattened out. We do expect a natural slide, but we do not expect a cliff edge drop like we have seen before in the last 24 months. Inflation has finally seen its way down. So you will probably see month-over-month inflation now in September and October looking better than what it was before. We, as a government, have paid back quite a bit of arrears, paid to some of our international investors. The capital account for the first time is actually positive for Bangladesh, and it hasn't happened in a very, very, very long time. There are asset recovery and banking reform commissions that are being looked at. And as you have probably seen in FT, the number that's been thrown on the table at this moment is about $17 billion that got heisted out of the country. So I'm not really sure that we're going to get the whole money back, but that is quite significant for a country of our size and stature. And therefore, we will run a process to see how far we can go in recovering some of the assets lost by the country. And then following up on that, I think a lot of our investors, private equity firms, and thank you for your advice and suggestions again, I think we've long way to go in repatriation and fixing our bankruptcy law. We'll come to that in a minute. The second point, where lack of consultation has been a massive issue for both inbound and the existing investors. What we're trying to do is we're trying to reform the government into a relationship-based model. So the idea is the investor lands at the airport and you have a single point of contact for the investor throughout his journey. That single point of contact walks you through the alleys of the government, takes you to the right ministry, helps you register and get the licenses to do business in Bangladesh. We are hiring specialists from private sector and looking at exchange programs with the private sector companies. We've actually just hired the head of business development this afternoon for BIDA, which I'm very excited about. We're setting up a separate research team that will help the incoming investors and also the government of Bangladesh to be able to take right decisions around sector focus and the right policies for incentive programs. And then finally, we are actually about to launch an investment advisory board that will sit on top of the government machinery, will help, and you've seen probably this in many other countries, they will help us understand which direction we should be heading to ensure continuity of foreign direct investment. Lutfi Bhai will probably talk a bit more about steering committee, so I'm not going to steal his thunder and leave it there for now. But we've also recently seen some intention from the government and cross-ministerial intention to come up with strategies. So one great example is we had this morning a conversation in the shipping ministry about national port strategy so that we can clearly define our incoming investors. Where do we intend to set the port and infrastructure in our country in next 10, 15, 20, 50 years? And how does that fit into their investment ambitions? For access to resources, we have taken a step back and tried to understand how far we can really go as a country and what can we serve. We don't want to provide false promises, and therefore we will be optimizing our delivery and we will be focusing on pace of execution. So when you look at the economic zones, we have historically said and promised many of them, but we haven't given a very clear timeline on when these zones are going to be live. Our plan now is to give a very clear Gantt chart for all the investors who can look at it and understand if they go to economic zone X, this is when they expect to receive utility supply for their factory. NBR has been very kind, and we are opening up a concept called Authorized Economic Operator. It's essentially green channel for transportation of goods and services. It's a fantastic idea which will hopefully minimize a lot of challenges at the ports in the supply chain network and logistics, which has been a key pain point for our investors. Supposedly, and I'm very confident they will make it happen, it should be live from 1st of January 2025. And then finally, power supply has been an issue, and Power Ministry has thankfully also accepted an idea of potentially allowing captive power, where power supply is not really as uninterruptive as the factories would like them to be. And finally, the last point I would touch is our initiative on corruption. So the first one, again, we are looking at a national single window, which is going to be live in first quarter of 2025. This essentially takes out everything related to the port billing process. So everything goes into online system, which takes out human interaction, takes out the time and effort you would have to go through if you were to use manual processes to process your goods and supply. Again, we genuinely believe that digitizing the whole public infrastructure will eventually take us to a point like many other countries where the process is much more efficient and is free of rent-seeking behavior. And for that, we're also opening up a team which is looking at the overall customer journey, as Lutfi Bhai has mentioned, and looking at that and thinking, how do we set up digital public infrastructure so that the heavy interaction points are completely digitized and you're out of human interaction? So these are foundational improvements that we know are there, quick wins, high impact. At the same time, in parallel, we do intend to continue to drive solutions for the key challenges, but also create a benchmark through disaggregation of sources. So what we have now is a lot of mini pots where initiatives are taken, but they don't necessarily talk to each other and they don't give a full architectural view of what's going on. Our plan is to bring it to that level and then genuinely have a very clear idea of how are we going to look at starting from data, how are we going to ensure data security, what is our genuine quantifiable benchmark, and how do we take it from where we are to where we should be. And as part of this whole structure or whole initiative, we are also planning to initiate a new citizen charter through consultation with investors, partners, political parties, and members of the public. We will come to you with a draft at some point and take your thoughts on how do you, or maybe let's put it this way, in a very simpler way, what is the picture of success? And we will take it from there and try to unlock the challenges that would stop us from getting there. So overall, I think the message to the entire community from Investment Development Authority or / the Investment Promotion Agencies for Bangladesh, and one of my good friends have finally said that my current job is to be the Chief Marketing Officer for Bangladesh. As that, my promise would be that we will be working really hard to remove barriers and facilitate business in a very fair and transparent manner. I'm very sure that the investor community, the NRBs, our partners are very, very intelligent. They know exactly what to do. All we need to do is to remove the barriers and let them play the way they should be allowed to. So I'll stop here and maybe we will jump into taking questions for Lutfi Bhai. We've received tons of questions today, so we will try to cover at least a few of them and try to answer the rest of them via email at a later time. So let me maybe first jump into, we call a tough question, Lutfi Bhai.
Okay.
There is a lot of question mark around this technocrat government, and I have heard this personally. I'm sure you have too. The sort of the way to frame the question is, are we really pro-business government?
Okay. I'll tell you the answer and then I'll try and explain it. So yes, we are, and we must be. At a macroeconomic level, it's a reality that we run twin deficits. We have an external imbalance and we have an internal budgetary imbalance. And those two will probably remain for some time. And for each one of them, we have a statistic of shame attached to that. With the external account, our FDI to GDP ratio is one of the lowest compared to any comparables. And on the domestic account, our tax revenue to GDP is one of the lowest compared to any peer group that you may want to come with. And neither of these two can be addressed by printing money. So the only way is you will need investments in that space, both local and foreign investments. So investments are an imperative. Also, we talk about economic fundamentals, which have been and remain strong in Bangladesh, but they do not translate into investment outcomes. And so we need to really redouble our efforts to make that translation, that execution occur. In terms of the government right now, so I don't know if very many people realize just how unusual it is for someone like me and my profile to be in my role in government, but even more unusual for someone like you to be in your role in government as beta chair. And I don't mean the Guinness World Record. I mean the private sector experience, the fact that you've experienced this ecosystem from the other side of the table, having interacted with people who are now your counterparts in Singapore, Indonesia, etc. And I think it's a statement, the fact that we arrived less than 2 months into the life of this government, of the seriousness with which the government looks at this space. Now, we're also very mindful of the concept of ease of doing business. And most of the time, people talk about ease of doing business by business. But actually, there's also a big part of that, which is the lack of ease of doing business inside of government. There are some excellent bureaucrats, long-standing civil servants, who want to do the right thing, but they're constrained by their ability to do business because of the way things operate within. And a good part of our role is to make sure that the rules of business within government are made easier for government to function better, so that there isn't as much of a systems loss that we currently have in just the way that various parts of government interact with each other. To give you an example, your authority, BIDA, and the other authorities, there's a private public partnership authority, there's an ICT authority, there is BESA and BEPSA. Well, with BESA, we bundled it into BIDA very quickly on day 2 because we felt that was an obvious thing to do. You guys are in the same building and a lot of overlapping functions, so why not? But with the others, and not just the zones I mentioned, but also, for example, Chittagong Port Authority, the people who deal with energy, with shipping, there actually wasn't a coming together of these authorities at the same time. So yesterday, we convened, and the chief advisor invited all of them to come under the same roof, and we convened on how all of these authorities, parts of government that are doing related work of investment, promotion, and facilitation are joined up. They follow best practice, they learn from each other's experiences, they make sure that an investor is handed over from one to the other in the most seamless possible way. They share some of their frustrations with other parts of government, and then they combine forces if necessary to do that. And I was surprised to learn that not only had they not met together as a group, some of them had not met, their governing boards had never met in the lifetime of these authorities. It's been, it looks like it hasn't been as systematic as it could have been. So ease of doing business within government in a non-hierarchical manner, going back to the 2 principles I mentioned at the start, due process and customer journey, is something that clearly we believe in and we are effecting on. Listening journey, you mentioned your 200 meetings. I've been here a little bit longer. I look at my stash of business cards, huge number of people that we are listening from. On my US trip, I think we were there for 4 days and we had at least 4 group sessions with various groups of investors and NRBs that we wanted to listen from. You mentioned the Investment Advisory Council you're putting together. We'll probably have an economic engagement forum. So lots of ways for businesses to interact with us. So we're definitely pro-business, but I do want to put an important caveat to that. And that is that it has to be responsible business. We will not do business with the suppression of rights, human rights, labor rights, or suppression of standards. I'm off to the ILO in a few days' time. Our delegation will be headed by Dr. Asif Nazrul, the law advisor, and we'll make a very clear statement of commitment that we will follow through on the ILO conventions that we are signatories to, but for which there are outstanding complaints that we do not implement them. So we've been engaging with stakeholders around the table, and we have come up with our proposition, and we'll be going there and making that statement. And frankly, most businesses agree. Since the tragic Rana Plaza incident, standards in many factories have improved. We have a very large number of green, sustainable factories. So actually, it's not at odds with what businesses want anyway. But we will seize the agenda when it comes to responsible business. And we will then take that agenda to the global brands so that they come with us and make sure that they are valuing those improvements in standards. So yes, we are pro-business.
Thank you. But if you are pro-business, then how or how are you solving the short-term teething problems that the businesses are facing since the government has changed? And for example, I have heard tons of concerns about law and order, and the list could go on.
That's right. I was looking at the Q&A, the questions coming in. There's energy, there's tax, there is law and order for sure. So First of all, solving key issues. I don't think we're near solving any of those in a way that I can be confident to say we've drawn a line underneath them. But we have an approach to solving these key issues that I feel quite confident about. And the general approach is you've got to establish a baseline. What's going on right now? What is the context in which it's happening? Recognize the systemic parts that contribute to the whole, but isolate each driver one by one, and then deal with each one of them factually. And I'll give you a concrete example with regards to the RMG sector, for example. But this is true for, in energy, for example. Dr. Fazal Kabir Khan, for example, the energy advisor, he will look at it methodically as there is an immediate supply and demand gap, a mismatch. How do you deal with that tactically? And then there is a medium to long-term question of what is the optimum mix of energy, including renewables, that need to be put in there. When it comes to tax, Dr. Salahuddin Ahmed has he's just separated organizationally the division that looks at tax policy and the division that looks at tax administration, so that you don't have a conflict of interest between the two. The NVR chair, who is an incredible, dynamic, forward-looking gentleman. His orientation is one of how can I facilitate, how can I digitize, how can I inject some certainty so that taxes are not changed during the life of an investment post-fact. So those are the approaches. For the ready-made garments sector, where we've had unrests, and it's probably the crucible where you had many of these things come together at the same time. 85% of exports is ready-made garments. It's a huge sector for us. We're not only pro-business, we value that sector. And it required a multi-pronged approach of isolating the issues, as I just mentioned to you, and teamwork amongst the advisors. So at its core, there needed to be a renegotiation of the basic agreement between workers and employers. In many cases, the relationship between the two and the way conflict was resolved was not right and not durable. So 4 advisors worked on an 18-point agreement that has been signed on to now by the employers and employee groups in this sector. And the 18-point agreement is the basis on which certain steps are going to be taken and the basis on which future conflict should be resolved. So that's the centerpiece. Then you have a law and order situation. And again, there were real issues, but also there were issues based on impressions or based on facts from a week ago, as opposed to what's going on now. So we wanted to inject a very facts, data-driven look on the law and order control room. So again, a couple of us look at the control room and the stats, which factories are shut, which are not, where the issues are, where there are non-payment of wages on a factual manner, and deal with them one by one. Then you have a small number of factories that have financial difficulties and or are unable to pay wages. Again, a limited number of them. You can look at them in isolation. If there is a requirement for liquidity assistance, we can look at those. If there is a requirement to look at the other corporate restructuring, we can look at those as well. And then finally, the bit about global buyers. I and many others have been speaking to the global buyers to make sure that they're reassured. And again, when we make sweeping comments about buyers are taking orders away from here and remove them elsewhere, they have to be based on facts. And they have to be based on a sense of proportionality. So we're looking at that as well. So these are the ways you isolate and you block and tackle, and then you monitor, you learn from mistakes, you learn from lessons, and then you course correct as you go along. So that is the approach that we're taking to these key issues. I wouldn't say we have resolved these key issues yet.
Right, thank you. We were talking about it this afternoon. So, and if surprisingly it came up, or unsurprisingly it came up in the questions, given your background in Singapore and your understanding of the economic growth journey that Singapore has gone through, what kind of initiatives, or do you plan to implement initiatives that Singapore has done, and especially in this investment promotion space, to support and strengthen Bangladesh's business ecosystem?
Right. Well, it's probably a question for both of us, but I'll start. Firstly, I'm under no illusion that you can transplant the success of specific actions taken in one country wholesale and just plant it in a country like Bangladesh. A lot of these things are contextual. You need indigenous solutions, but there are some pointers that I think we should be wary of. The Singapore government, the governance, particularly the early days when they lost the British military base, which was an employer of 1 in every 5 Singaporean, they just upped and left. And the Singapore economy had nothing in terms of natural resources. They had to rely on foreign investments coming in, and they literally, civil servants picked up the phone and they were cold calling, begging and pleading foreign investors to come and place their operations there. I think National Semiconductor was the first one. They managed to get the CEO to visit, and famously between the first date of visit and 3 months from that date, the factory was in construction. And then they do copycats, they go around and get others to come and do the same. They've moved on now from getting factories to locate here. They're now focused on Taylor Swift coming to Singapore. And as you know, Taylor Swift's concerts this year generated so much money for the economy, Singapore had to upgrade its national GDP projection because of that. But again, whether it's Taylor Swift, whether it's AstraZeneca bringing its factory in, another event this year, they were done by a government service that is based on 3 mantras: look ahead, look across, and look again. So they look ahead to see where are the turns, where are the corners, how can we get the businesses of the future? Look across, meaning what is it that others are doing so that we're not reinventing the wheel and we're taking the best. Look again is maybe we turned something down last year, but maybe the context has changed. Can we keep an open mind and continue with that going forward? Time-bound execution is hugely important. We have foreign investors, potential reputable investors here right now in our system who have been stuck there for 7 or 8 years. They don't know what's going on. Are we going to carry on with that engagement or not? And if so, when? So that relationship management in a time-bound manner is important. We need consistency of ownership across the authorities, across the time, the touch points. And then you mentioned digitalization. I would add to that we also need to reverse what seems to be certain instances of remanualization. So there have been digitalization efforts which have over time been shut down or reversed for whatever reasons that we can speculate on, but they need to be turned back on. So quite a few things that we need, and I think we can get done by looking at others.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a sneaky feeling that one of the Taylor Swift tickets had your name on it, but I will leave it there. So moving on to the next question. Again, a great question, I think. There's a lot of interest from NRBs at this moment, from all across the world. How does the government plan to engage and facilitate NRBs?
NRBs, that's my favorite topic. And but I've got to start with an apology. I'll start with an apology, and I'll start with extreme gratitude. Apology because, as you mentioned, there's just been an incredible amount, volume, quantity, quality of ideas and instances of outreach coming our way. We're overwhelmed by the offers of support from everywhere, some amazing ideas, but also, frankly, some amazing stories of action. NRBs having self-organized and gone and done things to help and assist with the reform journey that we've just started on. So my apology that it's just not been physically possible for me to respond to many of them. It might feel thankless, but I want you to rest assured that there are many cases I've received the feedback. I have passed it on to whether to the relevant advisors or, as you know, Ashik, in many cases. There was one particular detailed note we received on Saturday. We met up and we rolled up our sleeves and we've assigned tasks to various people amongst us to deal with them. So they are being shared, they're being implemented. Please bear with us. It is energizing interacting with NRBs. As I mentioned, I met with many on the US trip. I've done other webinars, and this one is another tremendous opportunity. And I hope to do more. I do want there to be a more structured diaspora management process, like a proper community management approach where you can categorize by themes and interests, and look at ways in the way other diaspora, the Irish diaspora, organize themselves, for example. So we need a bit of time to figure that out. But in the meantime, I would put it to you that actually NRBs will probably generate better ideas than we do on how to get this done. And so my invitation to everyone is, please have a think yourselves on perhaps how you may want to structure diaspora engagement, and then come to us and say that this is what we're doing, and either you, government, get out of the way, or you, government, can you assist us with these specific things? And that approach would certainly be very welcome. At the moment, I appreciate that demand exceeds supply for NRB engagement, and I really hope we can do better.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Now, moving on to a very popular topic, and we've got quite a few questions about that. And I'm just going to club them together because otherwise I think we're just going to stay up all night today trying to answer these questions. How can we make the start of investment or a startup ecosystem easier in Bangladesh? It has been challenging and tough for a lot of startup entrepreneurs.
Right. Well, again, the general approach is the same that I mentioned, which is let's take stock of what the situation is. Let's look at the drivers in isolation and try and tackle them one at a time. The approach is one from the angle of skills and jobs. Technology skills and jobs, we need as many of those as possible. It isn't necessarily the approach of unicorns. It's genuine value add to the real economy. And look, there's no conflict between the two, so I'm not creating a false binary, but there is an imperative for us to generate jobs, facilitate jobs, and by jobs I mean also enterprise. One of the iconic tragic moments during the student revolts was the death of Mugdha. He was a software service provider, perfect rating on the platform that used to provide that on. His twin brother does exactly the same. Again, perfect rating. And I know people like him, people like them, they would like there to be better payments options, cross-border payments, cross-border movement of capital. There we need interactions with Bangladesh Bank. And again, we have great partners in Bangladesh Bank. We have a great partner in NBR. So we should be able to look at those in that manner. I confess, and I know the ICT advisor is looking at this root and branch, and I confess I haven't had a chance to look at it in detail myself, but I think it's this weekend that I've been invited by leaders of that sector to come up and complete that part of the listening exercise. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Right. Thank you. I think we've just hit the end of mark in terms of time, and unfortunately we've just done half century in the number of questions we've received in last 45 minutes. What we will do is we will actually write the answers back to the attendees. Unfortunately, as I said, if we stay on, I think there will probably be another 50 questions, and thank you for those questions. This is exactly why we tried to set this thing up, and we're going to come back every month, be accountable. Reminds me of my result day in boarding school, but we will come back and try to explain to you what are we doing, why are we doing what we're doing, and also continue to take your questions. And in between, as the questions come through, we will actually try to answer them in the next 2-3 days. So please, if you can, if you're willing to, please leave your email to our Q&A session, and we'll get back to you soon. But thank you very much. Thanks, Ulfi. Thanks very much for joining us in the very first session, and hopefully see you soon. And all the best to your trip for ILO convention.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good night, all. and evening to all of you, and thank you for joining second State of the Investment Climate by Government of Bangladesh. My name is Ashik Chaudhary, currently working closely with my colleagues in the Investment Development Authority and the Economic Zone Authority as Executive Chairman. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Ahsan H. Mansoor, an economist and the 13th Governor of Bangladesh Bank. Welcome, sir, and thank you for accepting our invite.
Thank you. You're most welcome.
Like last time, we will split the session into two. In part one, we will be sharing key initiatives where we are working on to improving the investment climate. And in part two, Dr. Mansoor will be answering your questions that you have already sent via the link, or you can still ask using the chat button. You may not be we may not be able to answer all of your questions, but we'll try our best and probably send some of the later answers to you directly via your email. So let's jump right into the presentation. Assuming you can see my screen. Okay, so I just wanted to revisit the rationale and the purpose of this webinar. We wanted to give you a platform to ask questions and share information and stay honest to our promises. Nearly 2 months into this role, I've spoken to hundreds of CEOs, entrepreneurs, and partners and asked them the same questions, the two questions. What challenges are you facing and how can we help? We had also requested to send them to us an order of priority. The priority they would like us to work on, assuming that we are an interim government and we have a finite time frame to get these things done. So we took the list and summarized them, and here's the final version. Quality of government services, which includes OSS or one-stop service, or the lack of it. There isn't enough collaboration between private and public sector. We keep on changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game and create utter confusion. Access to resources, be it gas, electricity, or labor, and finally, corruption, which I don't think I need to explain and talk about it further. All these combined have resulted into what you see on the right-hand side. In 2024, the total FDI was only $4 billion. Less than $1 billion was what I would call high-quality capital, equity capital. So the question really is, what actions are we going to take to make it better? Here's the list. It's broken out by completion quarters. So some of the Q2 next year ones we have probably kicked off, but will take 6 months to complete. The greens are the ones we have already ticked off. And here are some photos of the green ones we have ticked off. The communication platform, the GOB coordination committee, project ambassador. So here's a list, here's a video, here's a photo of some of our multinational CEOs. And actually they combine in combination the biggest FDI for our country in last 50 years. So they visited our boss in a meet and greet event in his residence. And jokes apart, I must admit that the homework they have given to us has caused us sleepless nights. So the other photo I'd really like to show you is a meeting from today, an inter-authority, inter-ministerial coordination meeting on investment facilitation was held at the Chief Advisor's office. It was decided at an earlier meeting, chaired by Chief Advisor himself, that a monthly forum of heads of investment promotion wings and key ministerial units will convene to track progress in improving the investor experience. chaired by Special Envoy Lutfi Siddiqui. This forum takes a whole of government approach to the journey of an investor to facilitate smooth execution and in a time-bound manner and within existing laws and regulations. A secondary objective is to recommend changes to laws and regulations where required. So a great example of that is Project Ambassador. We recently did an experiment with the government. Pace of execution has always been flagged as a problem within government machinery. So as a test case, a separate SWAT team was set up in Bida to identify key challenges Young One Group has faced and to try to resolve them. We called it Project Ambassador as we must convert our critics to ambassador to win in FDI space. And today, we actually held a governing body meeting chaired by Chief Advisor, where all key issues that were flagged by Young One Group were discussed and executive decisions were taken in favor of them to make sure that we convert them into an ambassador. Another ambassador on our side is Stephen Kobos. So shout out to our friend Stephen from Accelerate Energy. His mention on Bangladesh in an earnings call was very heartwarming. So thank you, Stephen. I'm going to go back to the list one more time for you to have a quick look. And obviously, we're going to share this list with all of you. This presentation will be made available in LinkedIn. So please feel free to download it, hold us accountable to ensure that we are keeping our promise about executing all these initiatives. The initiatives, as you can see, range from co-location of agencies into Bida, which is an interministerial exercise, to some strategic exercise like port strategy, down to an institutional exercises within Bida and Beza, where we are trying to make these agencies one of the best agencies in Bangladesh and hopefully at some point in time across the region. Our special guest, I do want to cover one more item, which is In Focus Bangladesh Bank. I've had a lot of experience in dealing with Bangladesh Bank or interacting with them while in banking. And now that I'm part of government, we try to collaborate with them and see if we can unlock some of the challenges investors typically raise or face with central bank issues. So a meeting took place, chaired by actually Honorable Governor, on specific issues related to foreign currency loan. If you look at the table on the left-hand side, this is from the Be Ready Index produced by World Bank. And it clearly shows you that Bangladesh lags far behind in terms of time it takes to get a loan in this country. So we really looked at the time piece and tried to find ways to make it faster. So the actions that were agreed and taken where that loan application and interest rate hedge applications are going to be clubbed so that they can be approved faster. All types of loan applications are now centralized, and therefore, whether it's coming from OBU and offshore, or it's coming into EZ, EPZ, or non-earmarked areas, they're all in the same place. So the pace of execution will be far more seamless, and the committee that's looking at it are also going to be far more experienced in making sure or understanding what needs to be done with these loans. There are Bangladesh Bank officials who are currently co-located in Bida office. They're still part of Bangladesh Bank, but they sit with us and they are experts in solving investor issues. They have been given expanded authority and some of new authorities so that some of the applications that come to them can be very quickly resolved and turned back. And the last point that got agreed was that the capital machinery usage terms have been expanded to 3 years. This is a draconian issue that we had in the banking system. So you have capital machineries that come to Bangladesh, and the only time they have to turn it into a long-term loan was originally only a year. Obviously, majority of the industries require more than a year to construct, and therefore we've now expanded it to 3 years, after which it can be converted into a long-term loan. So thank you to the Honorable Governor for actually being progressive about these issues, and we hope to make some significant changes down the line with the same authority. that's the end of my presentation. And we will, as I said, we will share this for you to keep it in your back pocket and ask us questions in future if we have lived up to the mark. But let's maybe just switch gears and move on to the second part of our episode today, which is with the governor of Bangladesh Bank. And I'm going to start with some of the questions that I've already received from you via the link. So maybe let me start with that. Stop sharing. Thank you again, sir, for coming. So maybe I'll start with a very topical and timely question, which is, how does the central bank plan to address the concerns raised by Moody's in its recent downgrade and enhance investor confidence?
Thank you, and let me welcome investors or potential investors or those who are interested in Bangladesh. All of you, welcome to this session. Well, let me tell you, I mean, Bangladesh government, this government is coming out of a crisis situation. We have what we call, in some sense, very perfect storm that we have to overcome. On the one hand, we had the balance of payment problem. We started with that. We had the reserve declining. We had depreciating exchange rate. Also, the deficit in the balance of payment was significantly negative in almost all criteria, be it current account, be it financial account, or overall deficit. On the domestic front, the import inflation rate was very high. And then, to make it even worse, there was a systematic robbing of banks, which made many banks, or I would say at least 8 or 10 banks, vulnerable to potential. So these are the initial conditions, and this didn't happen overnight. The thing that we would like to draw to your attention is that this is not a downgrade that should have happened now. The whole thing happened before this government came to power, or this economy is in the current state. When this downgrading was announced, by that time, for example, on the BOP side, the exchange rate has been stabilized. It has been stable for the last 4 months and very much stable. Secondly, because we are not selling any dollars, the foreign exchange reserve position is also very stable. And so the decline in reserves have been fully arrested. Third, overall balance of payment side, which is the main concern, is this reserve level, this stability of exchange rate, and the third factor is the overall balance of payment indicators. The balance of the current account. It was a large deficit, it is now virtual balance. It was financial account was also in large deficit, more than about $1.5 billion. Now it is 500, 600 billion surplus financial account. Third, the overall deficit is still slightly in deficit, primarily because of deficit that was incurred. I'm talking about the fiscal year, which was partly in the previous regime, is still in deficit, but it has improved by more than $1 billion. So what we wanted to point out to Moody's is that you have announced a downgrade at a time when things where outlook is improving, and you are saying that your outlook has declined, deteriorated. That is what our objection to this assessment by Moody's, and we protested it. We made a formal note of dissent, the timing, and basically saying that you have been driving the vehicle while looking at the rear view mirror and not looking front. You should be, while setting your outlook, you should be looking in the front view of the car, not in the rear view mirror for long. Because what you are reporting is something that happened in the past, but things are changing and significantly improved on the external side, which is their prime concern. So that will be my initial reaction to Moody's downgrade. And we think that inflation concern is also being addressed. Monetary policy has been significantly tightened, well beyond what was called for in the IMF program. and IMF will concede that point that yes, we're going one or multi-step ahead of what they have been asking. We have increased the policy rate significantly. We have so monetary interest rates are already liberalized, and interest rates have gone up significantly. So that's why giving support to the dollar. The taka is a very attractive asset now. The return on taka is like 12, 13, 14%. And so it's much above the US dollar return on the US dollar you can get. And the stability of the exchange rate has turned it around. And that's why we're seeing this positive inflow on the financial account. So we wanted to deliberately make monetary policy very tight. We deliberately wanted to make taka attractive as an asset class and make exchange rate stable there through that. And stability of the exchange rate is the cornerstone or going to underpin this future decline in inflation in Bangladesh. So what we have done for reducing inflation? We have tightened the monetary policy, as I said. We have stabilized the exchange rate, so there will be very little. World commodity prices are also very stable or declining, if any. So there will be no negative shock coming from external side. So we have neutralized that through exchange rate stability, and the outlook on the commodity market side is very, very comfortable. Petroleum prices have declined. Food prices in general is lower than it used to be. So we feel very comfortable that inflation is going to come down in the coming months. In addition to that, we also undertake a lot of demand side measures. We undertook a coordination with the fiscal side, and basically with coordination with the fiscal policy, reduce the government borrowing from the banking system so that more credit can be made available for the private sector to regenerate supply. We have noticed this, for example, raw material import settlement, LC, or raw material import, which have been settled in the last 4 months, is 10% above the last year. And last year it was minus 15%. So think about this turnaround. And what is Moody's telling the story? Moody's story is completely outdated and not up to date. That's why I told in that commentary to Moody's that please come, visit Bangladesh, make your assessment. Don't sit in Singapore, listen to narratives from somewhere else, and write your story. You will be behind the curve. That will be my response. So I think we are making significant progress on the macroeconomic front. We will come out of these 3 challenges that I mentioned upfront, and the new outlook should reflect that. So I would stop at this.
Thank you, sir. And you talked about the tightening. So maybe I just do a follow-up question on that, which is, how long do you foresee this tightening to continue in the short or medium run? Are we talking about months? Are we talking about years? What's your general view or feel at this moment?
We have studied the monetary tightening experience in the post-COVID period for most of the central banks, US, UK, India, Thailand, and several other East Asian countries. What we have noticed is that once the tightening starts, say from when the inflation is 10% or more, you start the tightening. By the time inflation rate comes down to 3% or 2%, depending on their target area and the speed of tightening, it normally takes 12 months to 18 months. That's the experience that I have seen. I plotted them and looked at it. So in our case, what should I expect? Given the relative stability of the exchange rate, given that this monetary tightening started in the month of May, I would say by May, June, it will be 12 months. I would think that by May, June, we should have inflation coming down to 7%, and perhaps in another few months, it will be to 6 or 5%. So when that happens, we will certainly, once halfway through that, we're now at a pause. We're not going to tighten in monetary policy any further. We're waiting to see the signals of the market. If the inflation doesn't go up significantly in the coming months, we will remain on the pause mode. But my expectation is that in 2 months' time, or even 1 month's time, we should start seeing a headline inflation coming down. Let me also take note of this. The non-food inflation is already down for the third consecutive month. It was first came down the month of August, then it came down in September, then it came down in October, modestly, but it came down steadily. So what I'm telling is that things are working. The reason the food inflation is high is because we had 2 floods, and we also had very long rainy season, which prevented the winter crops and winter vegetables and many other things, agricultural products to come to the market, like onions, like potatoes, like winter vegetables and so on. So food prices are on the decline now, and it will be, I would say, some of these will be collapsing in the next 2 months because there will be so much potatoes coming in the market in 2 months' time that potatoes will be rotting in the field, or that is my preliminary prediction. There is not going to be 80, but it will be 20 taka. So this is how the agricultural crop cycles work, and unfortunately for farmers, they will not get the money next time. So, but anyway, and the other thing I must say that the rural economy is getting the benefit of high prices. They're getting the highest price of for paddy. They're getting the highest price for potatoes. Any crop that they have now in this scarce time, they're getting good return. They're very happy. Of course, the consumers are. I hope this complaint will also be over in about 5-6 months' time. At that time, we will be unwinding this tightening monetary stance. We will bring down the interest rate along with the decline in inflation, and we hope that that external sector will also stabilize. I must make 2 points here. On the external side, these 2 factors are working in our favor. Despite all the noises you hear about unrest, industrial unrest in the garment sector, RMG sector, and so on, our export, which is 86% RMG driven, increased by 10% in the last 4 months. So that's one thing you must take note of. Despite all this revolution, all the disturbances of industrial unrest, exports are growing. In the month of October, the exports grew by 20 percentage point, 20%. That is a huge boost to our balance of payment. If you look at remittance, that is up by 28.5% in the last 5 months, up to end of November, from July to November, 28.5%. So we are getting a turnaround. We are seeing a turnaround in the balance of payment situation. And we hope the supply side, external constraint imposed by the balance of payment problem is being relieved. People can open LCs now. Yes, we have reduced the outstanding payment arrears. Accumulated LCs open but not settled from 2.5 billion to 454 million. And that is, why is this 454 million? Because they are not normal payment delays. They are mostly payment delays related to companies like Salom Group, companies which are not properly operating, like Simco Group and so on and so forth. So they account for a large part of that. And there is some also unpaid things with the power sector. So we are working on making this remaining external payment areas come zero, and hopefully we should be able to do it in a month or so.
Thank you, sir. And just I guess slightly a follow-up as well on this. So the inflation, as you have been trying to tackle it, is very commendable, and a lot of people consider the tightening of inflationary policies as a contradictory measure for economic growth. So how do you see that? How does Bangladesh Bank navigate or keep the balance between inflationary policies to tighten them, at the same time not make sure that it doesn't stifle economic growth?
Let me emphasize one thing. Yes, we have increased the interest rate. We know that it hurts the business in some way, but our statistics is very clear. When Bangladesh Bank or the previous government kept the interest rate fixed at 9% maximum, did they get investment in Bangladesh? Answer is no. When was the best time for investment in Bangladesh? It was in 2014, 15, 16, 17, when interest rates were 16, 17 or 15% level. Lending rate I'm talking about. So it is not the interest rate that is the single largest deterrent for investment in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, there are many other non-economic factors which Mr. Ashik Chaudhary, you are dealing yourself. You know it better than me. That there are many numerous non-economic factors that needs to be addressed, and those are more important factors than the financing cost. But nevertheless, I'm aware, and I only let me tell you, in terms of the growth, we are very much confident, and everybody, World Bank, IMF, ADB, everybody is saying interest growth will be at least 4.5 to 5%. So it is not a small growth also. It's a moderate growth in the context of Bangladesh because we are used to having 6.5% as one. But 4.5% under this kind of situation, I'm happy with that growth. And with that growth, with the balance of payment problem easing, I'm looking for a very strong rebound in the next fiscal year. And that's what is the lasting impact on our economy and our employment generation. And I hope that business community will understand that, investors will accept this explanation and give us the time for our economic policies to muddle through this system and give us the desired results.
Thank you, sir. And you talked about employment, so maybe we slightly switch gears to that. So one of the questions I have here, it says the SME financing gap is estimated to be USD 2.8 billion in Bangladesh. Why does the banking sector continue to have such a conservative lending practice?
This is the unfortunate part of our banking sector performance, I would say. It has been largely urban-centric in the past, and largely a large part of it, not the, for example, Black Bank. When I was the chairman of Black Bank, it was 36% SME lending. It was still a SME-dominated bank. It increased to 54% when I left, the share of SMEs in the portfolio of the Black Bank. But that is not the standard case. Many banks, particularly the foreign banks, for example, they don't even touch the SMEs. They don't want to go into that sector. They prefer trade. So unfortunately, still the preference is for trade and industrial investments, and there's a problem. With respect to industrial investment is the mismatch of assets and liabilities, because you have deposits which are short term. We are lending very long term, 7, 8, 10 years, 15 years. And that is not a congenial thing. We didn't have to develop the bond market for long-term financing. So it is, all financing is being done by the banking system. And a part of the problem of the banking system is because of that we are too dependent on debt financing rather than equity financing. So this is an issue, this is a medium-term issue that we also need to address, but that's also an issue. So we hope that these problems will muddle through that and work out.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next question. What key steps is Bangladesh Bank taking to restore trust in the Bangladesh banking system?
Well, first of all, the first and foremost is to improve the governance of the banks. There were a number of banks which were badly governed, and in that process, it was controlled by families, single family controlling about 7 banks and 3 non-financial institutions, which is completely against the law, against the rules of Bangladesh Bank, but it happened. They did it through the political support and blindly not looking at, as a blind person, not looking at the rules of the books. We have Bangladesh Bank. So that time is over. So governance is improved. That's the first thing that we have done. Secondly, we have created 3 task forces. One is looking at the asset quality and undertaking an asset quality review. This is being conducted with support from World Bank and Asian Development Bank. This asset quality review of these banks is going to start in early December. In a week's time, and that will be followed by asset recovery as well, which is being undertaken by another task force. And another, we have a third task force which will be looking at strengthening the operations of Bangladesh Bank. We will be focusing more on compliance, inspection, supervision, and the regulatory issues and enforcement. So that way, we believe that the banking sector will be tracking. Yes, we have some serious issue of recapitalizing some of these banks, but we don't believe that's going to be a systemic problem. It is a problem that we can contain, and it is only limited to Islamic banks. The largest Islamic bank has grown out of the liquidity pressure. And for the other banks, we are supporting them with liquidity support. And we hope many of them will come out through that process. But at the end of the day, we are undertaking also regulatory legal reform for Bank Resolution Act, which is now almost complete and reviewed by the World Bank and IMF. And once that review is complete, we will submit it for adoption, and that will give us a lot of flexibility in terms of resolving the issues related to the big banks. So it will be costly, it will take its time, but we will definitely want to leave behind much stronger banking system, much more accountable banking system, much more regulation-wise compliant banking system for the coming years.
Thank you, sir. And maybe if we have time for one more question, what is Bangladesh Bank's, and this is a good question to probably try to tie the knot, which is, what is Bangladesh Bank's plan or vision to facilitate the inbound investors? Or the question can be rephrased to say, what is Bangladesh Bank's plan or vision to facilitate increase in FDI into Bangladesh?
Thank you. I think we are, as Dr. Ashik Chaudhary said, that BIDA is making good efforts to ease the investment problems, and Bangladesh Bank is part of it. Bangladesh Bank has already used regulatory things. Like, for example, this is a small example, but let me mention. If you want to repatriate your profits or dividends or royalties, you don't anymore need permission from Bangladesh Bank. We have taken our hands off. We basically told that there are rules and regulations. The AD banks, they have the authority to remit any amount of money following the rules. So it is left to the banking system. Based on client relationship, bank client relationship, you will remit money. What we are trying to do is that any sanctioning of hard loans, we are easing it up. OBU operations of the banks, we are easing it up. Between OBU and DBU fund transfers, we have already take out the restrictions. We are trying to promote investment. Any investment proposal coming to us, which are from credible sources, we are approving it right away. We have also authorized agreed with BIDA that small loans and things like that can be processed there. They don't even need to come to the investment company. So we need to simplify these things. We want to liberalize our capital transactions process, investment regime, and the best thing that we can help the investor is by building up our macroeconomic, our ensuring our macroeconomic stability, continued macro stability, higher growth, and reserve build-up. Those will give the assurances of profitability and profit repatriation. From investment perspective, these are important considerations, and Bangladesh Bank fully understands the concerns of investors. We are fully committed to their problems to be solved and eased so that they can happily do business in Bangladesh in future.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We've just run out of time, but what we will do, as we have done before, we will send you the answers to the questions that you have asked online or during the session via email. And thank you for joining us again, sir. That was very kind of you. In a month's time, we will hopefully host another one where we will have another distinguished guest joining us and talking about investment climate. And we hope to see you all again. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you all. Good night.
স্বাধীনতার ঘোষণা নিয়ে সংবিধানে যে অংশটা যোগ করা হলো এই সংশোধনের মাধ্যমে শেখ মুজিবুর রহমানের জীবিত কালে 3.5 বছরতে কেন এটা যোগ করা হয় নাই? বুদ্ধিজীবীদের সংগ্রাম এবং সামরিক বাহিনীর সংগ্রাম এভাবে মুক্তিযুদ্ধের ইতিহাস দিয়ে বিভক্ত হয়েছে। এখন শুধু স্বাধীনতার ইতিহাস মানে মুক্তিযুদ্ধের 9 মাস 8.5 মাসের ইতিহাস, 265 দিনের ইতিহাস, এটা হচ্ছে একটা ভার্সন। এটা হচ্ছে মিলিটারি ভার্সন অফ দ্য ওয়ার। রাষ্ট্র সংস্কারে বুদ্ধিজীবীর ভূমিকা না বলে আমি ভিন্ন বলি বুদ্ধিজীবী সংস্কারে রাষ্ট্রের ভূমিকা কি?
আমার দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি হচ্ছে যে বুদ্ধিজীবী যিনি সবসময় প্রশ্ন তোলেন অন্যায়ের বিরুদ্ধে, অন্যায় শাসন, মানে হি ইজ দ্য ইন্টেলেকচুয়াল রেবেল।
বাংলাদেশে আমি একজনের বুদ্ধিজীবী